Hi everyone, welcome to another bite-sized review. Today we have Dunkirk. So I finally saw another Best Picture nominee, and it was Dunkirk. I watched four movies since I saw my last two, um, and it's gonna be a weird selection, but I'm just starting with the most basic one right now. So this is another Best Picture nominee. Been wanting to see this for ever since it came out. I wanted to see it in theaters, but I've been really conflicted about it because, like, I'm a huge Christopher Nolan fan. I love Christopher Nolan. I love pretty much all of his movies, um, in a way. Pardon me, my mic is a little funky today. So, like, I love Following. I love Memento. Insomnia is all right. I love The Prestige. The Batman movies I really enjoy. Batman Begins is solid. Dark Knight's one of the best superhero movies ever made, if not the best. Dark Knight Rises, it had a lot of problems, but I loved a lot of the creative choices that he made. He does a lot of interesting, like, plot and story things, and you have to hand it to Dark Knight Rises that it went in interesting directions and was bold. You know, unlike superhero movies nowadays, which are just so safe and tame and boring. Um, and I loved Inception. People might think it's overrated, which I would say it is to a degree, but I think that it had a lot of great things in it. I really liked Interstellar. Not fantastic movie, kind of derivative in a lot of ways, but still very bold, very creative for a studio movie. And now Dunkirk. Um, I think the reason I wasn't eager to see this was the trailers weren't extremely interesting to me. Um, I didn't know a whole lot about this thing, and it got good critical feedback, but a lot of people I knew just weren't that interested or into it, and they were just like, "Oh, it was good, it was okay," and that's all they had to say. They never expounded on it, and it made it almost feel like I was being validated in how I felt about the trailer. Where it's just like, there it is, it exists. Let's move on. Um, so that kind of kept me from watching it for a long time. And it is only up until now that I've finally seen it. I think it came back. When did this thing come out? When did Dunkirk come out? It's been out for a while. When was it released? July. So it's been like half a year. It's been at least 6 months, right? Um, about 6 months that since this thing came out. And I wanted to see it back then, and I never did. And now I finally have. And I really, really liked it. It was good. It was really good. I want to expound on it, though. I want to talk about it because everyone I know either isn't interested, hasn't seen it, or if they have nothing to say. And it's been driving me crazy. And I'm not one to really seek out reviews by people. I usually just, like, if Red Letter Media or Your Movie Sucks has something to say about it, that's all I hear. Or, friends and family. So let me talk about Dunkirk because, and I think to begin talking about Dunkirk, I need to talk about Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan, for all those movies I just listed off, if you've seen any or some of them, you kind of know this guy's shtick. He's very cerebral. He has a love of cinema. He has a love of sci-fi. He really likes mental things. I'm doing a great job at describing this. Mind games, problems with identity and mental health, all kinds of things like that. Really good. But he fell off the wagon a little bit when it came to writing. At about 2010, I would say. With Inception, I started to notice some flubs when it came to writing characters. Because you watch Following, the characters are pretty good, his first movie. You watch Memento, and you're like, these characters are great. Like the character that Guy Pearce plays, I forget his name. It's a great character. Um, and as time goes on, You're watching his movies. The Prestige had great characters. Batman series had pretty good characters. I mean, Joker's one of the best characters in superhero movies. And then Inception happened, and you're like, Leonardo DiCaprio is a little bland. Most of these characters are bland. You don't really understand a whole lot about them. You don't know much about their life. You just know that, like, Leo's like, my kids, and Michael Caine's watching them, and my wife, oh, my wife. It's very one note. Like, what I loved about Inception was the plot and the cinematography and the practical effects and the score. That's what I loved about Inception. I didn't love the characters. The characters worked enough to make the movie happen, but I didn't love, like, I loved Memento for the characters, right? And I can't say that about Inception. It's a different thing. Same with Interstellar. Characters, Matthew McConaughey, like, great performance, but that's not what drove it. What drove it was what was happening, which I think was great. Very 2001 inspired. Part of the reason I liked it is very epic space sci-fi thing that hasn't really been done since 2001, and I loved seeing that again. But the characters were just whatever, you know? Um, so it's part of the reason why with Dunkirk, I was, because I just kind of started to feel that those speed bumps in his movies. So that's why I was a little apprehensive when it came to seeing Dunkirk. Um, but then I saw it, and then I kind of read up on Wikipedia. And if I had known some things sooner, I would have seen this a lot sooner. Christopher Nolan wanted to make a movie about the escape from Dunkirk. For those of you who don't know, Battle of France, crazy, terrible battle that the Germans won pretty decisively. You look it up on Wikipedia, massive articles, lots of stuff to read. Um, for the Allies, it was a pretty big defeat. Winston Churchill had a great speech though about it, and that's kind of told through a newspaper narration at the end of this movie. "We will fight on the beaches," that famous speech. Um, but there are British and French forces, no Americans. So this isn't really like an American movie. It's very British kind of based. Um, Christopher Nolan is British, so it kind of makes sense that that would work. And sort of why this movie hasn't really been done to this effect, or this topic hasn't been covered extensively in American cinema, just because it's not really, Americans weren't really involved, so it's not really always on the front of their minds. Um, British and French forces trapped in Dunkirk, trying to escape, get back home, um, because the Germans are surrounding them on all sides. And it's a crazy story. Like, look into it. There's a lot of interesting details. But Nolan wanted to tell this story, land, sea, and air. So there's kind of three separate stories going on that sort of occasionally interconnect. And it's mostly told through cinematography, score, and just kind of physical body language. There's very little dialogue. So in that way, what sort of held a lot of the characters back in earlier Nolan movies, at least for me, was some of the dialogue. It felt kind of exposition-y. Like Inception was just mostly exposition, explaining like, this is how it all works, and we need 2.5 hours to tell you guys because this is complicated. And you didn't really have time to kind of sit and stew in these characters like Leonardo DiCaprio's character. So with this, without dialogue, which I would say Nolan has fallen a little off the bandwagon with for the last 7 years, fantastic in this. The dialogue is very minimal, and characters' actions are what determine their character. And that's fantastic. That's really good. It really kind of plays to the strengths. Like, the characters in this, I forget their names, they're not said very often. Like I said, very little dialogue. Seem much more potent to me than anyone from Inception or Interstellar. Better characters in Dunkirk than Inception and Interstellar is what I'm trying to say. But yeah, that is what I really noticed, and that is fantastic. The score is really good. I was really impressed. Like when I saw in the best original score, um, Phantom Thread, Johnny Greenwood. I still champion that. I still want Johnny Greenwood to win for that. Um, Three Billboards, very unremarkable score. Last Jedi, John Williams, typical fare. Shape of Water, still haven't seen it, so I don't know. Then Dunkirk, Hans Zimmer, and I was like, whatever. I mean, I think I said that in the Phantom Thread video. I'm like, whatever, Dunkirk, Hans Zimmer, you know what it's going to be. Hans Zimmer is someone I keep taking for granted, especially with Nolan movies, because he often gets a lot of flack for being like, Hans Zimmer does the same stuff over and over. But it's like, the Dark Knight soundtrack was amazing. The Joker theme with that one violin note, that's good. Inception had a fantastic soundtrack, like the rotating hallway scene, and Time is good. They're very effective for communicating what they need to communicate. Interstellar, the organ, the main theme of Interstellar is so good. And then with this, very good. It fits the theme very well. It's not typical Hans Zimmer fare. I mean, I feel like he can change it up enough to be, kind of a chameleon to fit every movie, at least Nolan wise. Um, he did something that Johnny Greenwood did with Phantom Thread. I don't know if I mentioned this in Phantom Thread video, but like a score would extend over like three scenes and kind of interconnect them. With Dunkirk, a similar thing happened at the very, because it really, but it starts like kind of balls to the wall. It starts with like a German ambush. Main character is forced through the city to the beach, and he sees a bunch of people evacuating. And the rest of the movie is him trying to basically hop ship and stow away and do anything he can to get back home. I'm not going to go into spoilers in this one, by the way, too much, because I want people to see it. So I'm going to try to be vague. I want people to watch this. I mean, maybe people have. I think it did pretty well. But where was I? The score. It would just like escalate over like, and like strings would get faster and faster and faster. Not like the tempo would increase, but the notes that they were playing would be like, eighth notes, 16th notes. It would just get faster and faster as tension built and things escalated, which I think was very effective. So I would say not a bad score. Not a bad score. I really liked it. I wish this movie was R-rated though, because there are parts where like bombs, drop on the beach and characters get flung everywhere, and you see the main character walk by them, and it just looks like people are sleeping on the ground, and I'm like, PG-13 violence, war violence, you know how it is. I don't know. Would this movie have made that much less money if it was R-rated? I don't think so. I mean, I don't think 17-year-old and under 17-year-olds are going to see Dunkirk. Maybe they are. I don't know, but I feel like it could have benefited from that. I miss R-rated Christopher Nolan. That's all I'm saying. I really hope whatever he makes next is R-rated, because I like him when he's unrestrained in that way. And I feel like his name is big enough to where he can make anything. I mean, he made Dunkirk, and it was so successful because it had his name attached, pretty much. But yeah, I really liked it. Like, Tom Hardy's character was great. He barely did anything, but it was all through his actions. And I loved the way the movie kind of decrescendoed and how everything kind of culminated. Very easy to follow, and it's just one long tension-filled like thing. It's like a little over 2 hours long, and it's just constant tension. Always trying to get one place to the next and not die. Fantastic, fantastic. I was pleasantly surprised. I thought I would just be like, it's okay. But I honestly really enjoyed it. I probably won't see it again for a long time. It's a very different war movie than what you'd expect. It doesn't feel like Saving Private Ryan. It doesn't feel like any other World War II movie you've seen. Nolan has a very unique and specific touch he gives to his movies. So if you like that Nolan feel, it's in this movie, and you're gonna dig it. It's not so overt because obviously this isn't a sci-fi movie like he's done for the past however long. It's a war movie, but it still has that touch, and he really utilizes Hans Zimmer in this to great effect. So I would highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. That's really all I have to say. So thank you everyone for watching. I have a handful of other bite-sized reviews of all the movies I've been watching recently. I've been trying to catch up on Oscar stuff. Been taking breaks to watch intermittent other movies. So check those out if you enjoyed this. And yeah, I will see you all later.